Now you can imagine, poor little me was a passive smoker. Because, I mean, if you ever look in our apartment, you know, the walls, the way she smoked, the walls like under the ceiling, that when the smoke goes up and stuff, was brownish yellow after a while. She had to repaint our apartment regularly to get rid of that color. Like, let it come to food, for example. You have to imagine, after the war, people did not have anything to eat. I mean, the whole of Germany was suffering. They were running after every little scrap of food they could find. You would see a lot of emaciated people. I mean, people who were undernourished severely. And my family was, of course, right in the middle of all that. Like, especially the generation of my grandmother, she lived 2 world wars. She was in number 1 and number 2. But in my family, are you kidding? Whatever comes on the plate will be eaten. The problem was too, it's not me put the food on my plate. Because if I had the choice, I would only put in on a little bit. No, my mother put on, and I was like, oh my God. And I knew I had to eat it. Right? And then I would get my slap here and there. And my grandmother, one time, she was there and said, oh, but don't beat the child in the face. Nobody is supposed to see it.
Hey my lovelies, it's your girl Mel. Welcome back to my channel. We are here with mommy, so now I already know say it's another story time with mommy. Story time with mommy. So this is part 3 of mom's German story time. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Hi Mel's lovelies, yeah. Now we are still in my childhood, of course, because, well, people take a good time to grow up. So I wanted to give you some more impressions of how those times used to be in Germany. One point to make is my mother was a heavy smoker. I mean, that woman smoked cigarette flying. And you have to remember, though, at those times, cigarette smoking was in. You know, I mean, it was not like today that, oh, with all the health warnings and you can't endanger other people and so on. No, at those times, nobody even knew about the dangers, knew about lung cancer, knew about embolisms and stuff like that, because cigarettes basically had come in after the war, more or less. I mean, to that extent. So my mom actually got there. Because after the war, British soldiers were stationed at her hometown. Because I told you already, Germany was separated in 3 parts, and one part was supervised, if you want, by British, one part by American, and there was a part even with French people, and so our part was the British part. And my mother was a young girl right after the war finished. I mean, she was 45, she was 17 years old and 18 years old. And of course, she after all these heavy duty years of warring, they were happy to have a little fun around. And these British soldiers, like, it has been like that for the whole time they were in Germany. They got very good provisions from England. You know, they had their own shops called Nafi, and they would get, I mean, all kind of things that a German could only dream of at that point in time. So she got to know a group of people, and she and her friends, they used to go out dancing and have a little fun those years after the war. But that is when she started smoking as well, because they offered her cigarettes. And as I was saying, at that point in time, it was a very sociable thing to do. But as we all know, cigarette smoking, you get hooked easily on that. And basically, I have to say, throughout the rest of her life, my mother was more or less addicted to cigarettes. She had times when she stopped, and it would maybe last a year or 1.5 years, sometimes 2 years, and then she would start again. And right to her time of death, she would not stop smoking. Now you can imagine, poor little me was a passive smoker. Because, I mean, if you ever look in our apartment, you know, the walls, the way she smoked, the walls like under the ceiling, that when the smoke goes up and stuff, was brownish yellow after a while. She had to repaint our apartment regularly to get rid of that color. That's how hard she smoked. And I was in that household unprotected completely as a child. So maybe that is one of the reasons, unconsciously, because at that time I didn't know, and later on it was still not that prevalent, but I never ever smoked. I tried a cigarette once, and I found it horrible. And I was like, what on earth do people liking this? And from that, me never touch a cigarette again. So basically, you see somebody here who never ever smoked, only passively. So that was one part of my youth. And then the second part is like how people would bring their children up. Like I said, it was the education or the upbringing was much, much more rigid than what we know nowadays. Like, let it come to food, for example. You have to imagine, after the war, people did not have anything to eat. I mean, the whole of Germany was suffering. They were running after every little scrap of food they could find. You would see a lot of emaciated people. I mean, people who were undernourished severely. And my family was, of course, right in the middle of all that. And although I was born 10 years after the war finished, and by that time things had regulated, people could get food again, and people could do whatever they wanted cooking wise, but it had been embedded, like especially the generation of my grandmother, she lived 2 world wars. She was in number 1 and number 2. So for her it was like, you cannot waste food ever. So what happened when she brought that over to my mother, who herself now lived the finish of the World War II and went through the same problem, and she got it embedded in her as well. So in our family at that point in time, when a meal was cooked, you better finish the meal. There would not be anything thrown away, ever. What happened if my mother cooked a bigger pot, and the cooling at that time, yes, we had a fridge, but it was not big or anything, and you couldn't just put in pot after pot after pot. So basically what happened, if she cooked a bigger amount, the next day, say she would make like a beef stew. So something was left over. So the next day she would put in some more vegetables or something, reheat it, and you would eat it again. If something was left over again, she would maybe find something else to put in to stretch it enough for 2 people. And then basically of one cooking we would eat 3 times. But it had to be finished. Nothing was thrown out. And then my mother had one meal she was cooking. It was some kind of a beet. They call it Steckrübe. It's like an orange color beet that they were planting in Germany at the time as food. And basically it was an animal food too, I have to say. Cows and other animals would get that to eat. Nowadays nobody sells them too tough again in Europe. But them time they were basically even animal food. But again, through the war times they have started to love these beets, cook them up. It was this orange color mush, if you want, and then she would put in a little beef or something while it was cooking, or and then you had this like mushy vegetable thing with a little bit of meat in it. And me personally, I hated it. I hated it with a passion. And you know, I mean, children have another palate than adults anyhow, right? Plus, you know, children, sometimes they don't like this, they don't like that. And but in my family, are you kidding? Whatever comes on the plate will be eaten. The problem was too, it's not me put the food on my plate. Because if I had the choice, I would only put in on a little bit. No, no, no. My mother put on, and I was like, oh my God. And I knew I had to eat it. And the way she forced me is I had to sit down in front of that plate, even if it took 3 hours, 4 hours, 5 hours until me finished that plate. And I remember distinctly I had my spoon or the fork, and I was kind of digging little trenches in my food and building castles with it and doing all kind of sipping, but not trying to eat it. Seriously, I mean, I was so disgusted by that. And I was forced to do it. And I don't even know how I survived that. I mean, basically, my mother was a very good cook. Okay, don't get me wrong. She used to mostly cook things that I really, really, really liked. And I, for example, was a huge fan of hash browns, but the German way to cook it, and then you would eat it with sugar sprinkled over it, and applesauce, and I could yum that fly, and she would do that from scratch for me, and that was my favorite food as a child. Then she would really, no, she was a really, really good chef, but this particular thing here, and I was so, if you want, even a bit traumatized by her forcing me to eat it. That, for example, my children, that when I had them, I never ever forced them to eat something. Never.
Because I guess that's why I'm not eating veggies.
I could have forced her to, don't it? It might have been better for her too. But no, I could not do it to my children what was done to me. So I was really, really disgusted by that one particular food. And then, well, getting used to cooking stuff and recooking it if you had too much. Up to this day, and I'm 67 years old now, up to this day I have a hard time throwing away food. Hard time. Every time when it happens, it hurts me. Now luckily we have dogs now and animals, and what I do, I mix whatever leftovers we have with their food and they will eat it, and I'm happy about that because it is not wasted. When I'm in Germany, we do not have animals, and sometimes we do have quite a few times we have to throw away food, and seriously, it literally hurts me to do it. Every time I scrape it in the garbage, it's like, oh my God, you know. And especially when I as a child was striking also even a bit, my mother would always say, remember the children in Africa, they don't have anything to eat, they are starving. See, you have good food here, be grateful and eat it. That was embedded in my head too. So actually when I throw away things, then I still get this, oh my God, the poor children in Africa. You know, I mean, it's bad, really. I shouldn't even laugh about it. And otherwise, I mean, at those times in Germany, like, corporal punishment was still very much common, I would have to say. Now, my mother would not beat me in a sense, but I would get a slap once in a while. And I remember she always used to put me, basically my daily thing was coming from school, doing my homework, and then I would go outside to play. Luckily in our neighborhood there were tons of children, so basically whenever I went out in the afternoon, you had your crew of people that you knew, and we would play until dusk came, and by dark I had to reach home, of course, or by 6 o'clock in the evening I had to reach home. And then what my mother would do is let in a bathtub for me, which was nice, you know, and I would sit in the bathtub, and then she would bring me Abendbrot, the slices of bread with something on it and a drink, and I would basically eat my dinner in the bathtub, which I found is nice. I didn't have a problem, but later on I figured out, but wait, in truth and in fact, she did that to get rid of me. You know, because when I came in, yes, I was dirty, I needed to bathe, but then all she did is give me the few little sandwiches and the drink, and I was sitting in the bathtub for like maybe half an hour, even an hour sometime, because it was fun for me. And then she would take me out, and when I was smaller, she would dry me off. And right beside our bathtub there was the toilet, and when I was smaller, she would stand me up on the toilet so she could wrap me in the towel and dry me off and stuff. And I remember one situation, I don't know what I did, I don't recall that, but she wanted to slap me. So I ducked down, and with ducking down, I fell off the toilet, and my finger kind of went like this when I fell down and held to hold up myself with my hands, and I broke it. I mean, it wasn't broken through, but it was like cracked. So she brought me to the hospital, and they realized that, and they put on a bandage and stuff. But I mean, just because she wanted to give me a slap, and I tried to avoid it. Whoops! That is how I got my first bone broken, basically. And I mean, there used to be situations where I do not recall that I have been a very difficult child or anything, but I mean, her nerves were kind of raw. Remember what I was telling you last time with the loss of a husband and me being there, and further loss of a child before. Her nerves were kind of raw all the time. So things would upset her that maybe otherwise wouldn't upset her. Right, and then I would get my slap here and there. And my grandmother, one time, she was there and said, "Oh, but don't beat the child in the face. Nobody is supposed to see it." And I was like, "Oh, right, thank you." I mean, she didn't lick me that hard. I never got a blue eye or anything. But when I heard that comment, I was like, weird. So, really? I mean, So where's she supposed to beat me then? You know?
Where clothes cover it.
Yeah, definitely. So... yeah, and we have long sleeves in Germany most of the time too, because it's cooler, so yeah, it would be easy. But no, she never did anything harsh, really harsh to me. But I mean, that was like part of my childhood, and I did know quite a few children that got beaten by their parents. I mean, so I was considering myself extremely lucky, to be honest. And at that point in time, not like today where it is almost a crime, nobody would interfere or say anything. It was normal, you know. So basically I was still lucky to be in the place where I was, because, well, an occasional slap did not really do any harm to me. But again, when I had my own children, I really tried to avoid any form of corporal punishment, and I did pretty good, don't it?
I only got slapped once.
Once in all.
But you did it in my face.
Yes, so I did it.
You did not listen to your grandmother.
But I didn't slap you that hard neither, that it would show.
You didn't listen to your grandmother.
Yeah, but I didn't slap you that hard.
She said not in the face.
And by the way, that girl drove me crazy the whole day. Actually, all of my children, I have to say, they got it once. But that was always when they had almost a whole day of getting on my nerves.
And by that time,
really extremely obnoxious.
By that time, I was like around
you were
11.
Older. Yeah, you were older.
10, 11, somewhere there. So.
And what did you do? You don't remember? No.
I don't know. Either I talk to you, or I was supposed to bring down the garbage or something
like that,
and then because we never do it, and then I think me did respond to you one way,
a real bad way though,
something, I don't know.
Yeah, but I mean,
but nothing really bad
no, but I mean, the slap wasn't bad neither. But I mean, otherwise she can vouch to it. We never touch her, and her siblings can say the same. They got it, each of them got it maybe once.
Now in our adult days, show and threaten with sometime.
There we go. You want me to slap you now?
I'm still your
and
mother.
They laugh. They always laugh. They're like, yeah, mommy, you didn't do it when we were children.
Or she says, I feel like I didn't beat you guys enough.
True.
And me attack like now, you know, like when I'm 20, 28, 27. She want me come inside.
Yeah, but it's like more like a joke, of course.
Yeah,
we all know that.
But
yeah, but basically, so I counted myself lucky not to be in a violent family at all, you know, and then being outside all afternoons throughout the warm time. I mean, in winter, of course, it was different, because winter in my part of Germany can be really nasty, you know. You just have a lot of rain, it's gray, it's wet, it's cold, it's really awful.
Oh, somebody asked in the last video, Because you mentioned that you guys walked to school. What would happen if it was raining?
We had to walk to school same way. We had this little rain something them. We didn't even have an umbrella.
Like rain jackets?
Like a rain jacket, and sometimes we reached there halfway and wet.
Oh.
And had to go through the day halfway. Our shoes were wet, everything.
So it's not like they said, oh, today it's raining.
No.
Okay.
That's why nowadays when in Jamaica people always use rain as an excuse to come too late to work or don't go to work at all. And for me, I can only laugh about that, because for me it's like, so what? It rains, yeah. Are you made of sugar? Are you going to melt out in the water? It's like just proper dress up or use an umbrella or have even the water boots or something until you reach the place, and then you change to your other shoes or whatever. But rain is not an excuse. I mean, the only time we would get school off would be in summer when it was way too hot to be in school, which happened maybe once a year or 2 days a year, or if in winter we would have heavy duty snowfall with ice and everything, then they might call off school. But any other time, you better reach in time too. Not come late because of rain. Rain what? No. So in winter time, of course, we couldn't play outside so much, but everybody was always glad when springtime came. And I remember for me, springtime coming was when I could change from the long stockings, from the leggings to knee stockings, that only would reach to the knee or even below, like little socks. That was for me, that was a sign, yes, freedom is here again, thank you, And then we would start play outside. Even when it was raining, sometimes we played outside. So with this whole big group of people and children, we had so much fun. And so my days were pretty much over quickly. My mother never came out, she stayed in the apartment. And that is something that did hurt me sometimes, because a lot of the other children's mothers would meet at the playground, sit around on the benches, watching their children play, and chat in the meantime, and have sometimes they would even bring a little drink or some cake and distribute it. And so they had their little mother time, whereas the children had free time to play around and they would be watched. My mother never ever came down and watched. So sometimes I was a bit disappointed and felt it, but then again it was normal for me, so you don't really think that much about it as a child. But I remember when I was about 7 years old, some children built like a whip, like two stones, like
a seesaw.
Seesaw. Oh yeah, seesaw. Whipper.
No, seesaw.
Whipper, yeah. A seesaw, like on 2 stones, like bricks, and then a long board. That was it. Board was like centered, and then children would stand on the 2 ends. And what happened is I was on one end, another child was on the other end, and we were going up and down, not far and not high neither, but another child came and jumped on the board, and the board started to turn, and I fell off in an angle that I broke my shin, my leg.
And you may get it from?
So
yeah, broke up myself.
Everybody was, then they came,
no, it makes
the
sense.
child was there that jumped, he saw me sitting there, and then I tried to get up, and I said, but I can't get up, it hurt, and I cannot do it. And no, man, try, and I said, I cannot get up. And so finally they called an adult, and the adult would carry me to my house, and then my mother decided to bring me to the hospital, where they realized that my shin was broken. And it was a completely, nothing complicated, It just go like, it cracked through, straight. And there was nothing dislocated, there was nothing even slightly dislocated. Nowadays, they would give you a cast and send you back home. You know what they did? They kept me in the hospital for 6 weeks. I almost got crazy. And those 6 weeks were my summer holiday too. It was not even school time. It was my summer holiday, and it was a wonderful summer with a lot of sunshine. And I was laying in that freaking hospital, right? With nuns all around me because it was a Catholic hospital and the nurses were all nuns. And I was like so bored, completely and totally bored. But what happened through that boredom is my grandmother, of course, they came to visit every day, and she would bring me books. And she would bring me, at 7 years I could read, not super good, but I could read. So she brought me these books, and I remember distinctly she brought me the books of Pippi Longstocking. And at that time, they just were written from Astrid Lindgren, the lady that invented Pippi Longstocking. And she brought me those books, and I, out of pure boredom, laying in my hospital bed, started to read them and got completely hooked. And I got completely hooked on reading from that time on. From that day on, up to this day, I'm an avid reader.
She turned into a bookworm.
I was a bookworm right after that, from up to this day. Right now I don't have actual books too much anymore. I'm using the Kindle, but basically every day you will see me sit down and read. And before I go sleep, I read. I used to read when I was sitting on the toilet. I used to have a book right beside me while I was cooking and reading and cooking and reading. I mean, I was this crazy reader. Unfortunately, it never took over to my children. No. None of them really want to read, and they seem... I used to have, in every apartment I lived after, even as an adult, I used to have shelves full of books. Shelves. And all of them were read, trust me. All of them were read. There's not one I didn't read.
The only person who kind of reads a little bit is Yosha.
Yeah, Yosha once in a while, he will touch a book still, but not that often either. Well, and nowadays with all the gadgets that you have, and so people don't really get into it anymore. But at my time, I was so hungry for books, and I still have the habit, even if I have to wait somewhere, like in a doctor's office or any office or bank or this or that, I always start to read what is around me. If they have some brochures or some magazines or something, I pick it up and read it. I mean, I cannot do without. It is like, yeah, it's this lifelong habit of reading everything. And mind you, by now I can read pretty fast, of course. I mean, I can go crossway around over pages and get everything. And of course, then you have a book read in no time.
In Germany, actually, like up to this day, if mommy is in Germany, she actually spends her money and buys a magazine. Remember, you always buy this one specific magazine.
Yeah, true.
Every week?
Friday. It came out Friday.
Yeah, every week she goes out and buy the magazine. Yeah. And to me, it's just like...
And nowadays you get that same magazine online, and for some reason, no, I want the feeling of the paper, I want the turning of the literal turning of the pages, I want to smell the printing color. No, seriously, for me it's pleasure. It's pure pleasure. And if I read the same thing online, not the same at all. Yeah, so that is how I became an avid reader. Well, and of course I learned my reading in primary school, and I remember our teacher was an older guy at that time already, and a very nice teacher though. I mean, we all loved him to death. He was very, very good. And what he did though, throughout our 4 years in primary school, he would start pretty early to teach us the, what do you call it, Einmaleins?
The multiplication.
The multiplication for one time one or up to 9 by 9. And every morning he would take 5 minutes and teach us. And ask us 6 times 7, 3 times 3, 5 times 4, blah blah, right through every morning for 5 minutes, and everybody got asked and everybody better answer quick. And actually it has served me my whole life through, because up to this day, you tell me that and I'm there with the answer. I do not have...
8 times 7.
8, 7, 56.
Come here, test our people.
56. No, I'm serious. I mean, it goes far. I still have it, and I was basically grateful to him for that, just that. And then at those times, one more thing happened though, and that my teacher realized that I was not really participating in the class anymore, and didn't really, kind of fell off, because I was always a very, how to say it, I did like school, and I liked to go there, and I grasped things very fast, so I didn't have a problem, and suddenly it became more difficult, so they started to wonder. And then I had a doctor's appointment, and they found out that I was short-sighted. I was about at the age of 8, I was 7, 8, pretty early as well in my life. So what happened, of course, I got glasses, and I could finally see again, probably because I was not just a little bit short-sighted, right away when they discovered it, I was quite a bit short-sighted.
She was basically blind.
Not at that time, no, it got worse over the years.
Oh.
But I was halfway blind already. I am basically, I wear contact lenses. That is why I can see nowadays, and with the contact lenses, I do see really, really good. I see basically 100%, which with glasses you can never achieve that. So getting those at a later point in time was a blessing for me, because my glasses, and I prefer to have like bigger glasses, I don't want them a little bit in small, so and then you look on the sides and you don't see, you see. No, I wanted them bigger, so the size of my glasses, and at that point in time the glasses were, the seeing part of the glasses were pretty thick. So you can imagine, I looked like an owl. And especially when people looked at me straight through my glasses, my eyes were tiny. Because it was the opposite effect, right? Instead of getting bigger, I saw bigger, and they made my eyes look tiny. So actually from that time they would call me like Brillenschlange, which is like snake with glasses, and stuff like that, because it's an expression in German for people who wear glasses. And I had to deal with my part of bullying about that, and of course that was not very nice, and I did not really appreciate it. But as every child, you have your friends that don't care, and you just deal with them, and then the others, so who cares? It was probably a bit, I was a very shy child actually when I was young, when I was small. I was extremely shy, and that didn't really help with it neither. So, but once they discovered that I was short-sighted and I got my glasses, at least the schooling part was safe, and I finished the 4 years. And then in Germany at the time, you were recommended for, we have 3 different levels of school at the time. We have the Hauptschule, which is just the next lowest level you can continue school with, and when you finish that, you could maybe go into a profession like learning a profession like baker or some mostly manual jobs at the time. Then we had Mittlere Reife, which is the middle part. That would be like for nurses and bankers and so middle level people, office people and stuff like that. And then you would have the gymnasium, which would be like high school. When you finish that, you can go study. And I was recommended for the gymnasium just through my level of learning and
So you
knowledge.
didn't need to study to be like a banker or anything?
No, at that time, no. That was like more like an office job.
And not to be a
I
nurse?
mean, they would them work themselves up through the years, but basically you have nurse were just you have the Mittlere Reife in the middle part, and you could start nursing school.
Okay.
And they had that for a very long time, up to now. I think nurses can do that still on that level. So there were several, you knew already, if you have the gymnasium like then you make like the high school diploma, which in German is called Abitur. If you have your Abitur, at that time you could go to the university and study.
Well, Abitur is more like, it's not the high school diploma, it's like A levels and O levels, or sixth form.
Okay, okay.
Because it is 12 12th grade.
Yeah, okay.
12 and
Yeah,
13 grade.
okay.
High school
Alright.
is done after the 11th.
Okay, no, well, so it would, if you want, it was the highest level of education to that degree that you could get, and I was recommended to go there because they said, oh, she have the ability and she's smart enough, she will do it. And
so it's like how, alright, here in Jamaica, for example, it's like how they have the GSAT for the 6th graders, and based on their performance there and the list of school that they put where they want to go, you know, if you rank high, then you basically get matched with the school that, you know, fits your ranking and your performance. So if you're a good performer in school, they would allow you to go to your, you know, first high choice of high school. Yeah. So it's basically like the same thing, that they just rank the people based on their performances. So Hope Trula was just basically for the, you know, least.
You don't want to discriminate by people who, first of all, a lot of them who just weren't interested in school and didn't want to learn. There were a lot of them, or some people did not have the abilities to really educate themselves on a really higher level.
Low performing students, and then, you know, they were like just levels. Then you have middle performing students and then very high performing students.
So I was in the high part. Yeah, so with this 4 years of primary school, we will finish this part of my German story. By that time I reach about 10 years. With 10 years at the time, you would change over to the higher school. So that would be it
in
for
4th grade. Yeah, because in Germany, just to keep it in mind, primary school is from the 1st to the 4th grade, and then you go
from 6 years old to 10 years old.
You continue on to high school, 5th grade, going up.
Yeah.
So it's not like here in Jamaica where primary school is from 1st to 6th grade and then high school is the 7th grade. No, it's 1 to 4 and then 5 is high school.
Yeah, as I was mentioning before, you start basically with 3 years old with the kindergarten. So from 3 to 6 you go kindergarten, 6 to 10 you go to the primary school, and after 10 you split up. Nowadays they do have a school form called Gesamtschule, where basically all 3 levels are still in the same school, and everybody starts on the same level, but then it will be distinguished who goes up further and further and further. So basically that is a newer form of education in Germany nowadays. You went to one like that. Okay, one more time, I'm telling you goodbye for now, and I hope it was a bit interesting to see how upbringing and time in Germany was in the early 60s. Going up, like late 50s, early 60s, and yeah, your turn now.
Yes, guys, so that was it for today's story time. Thank you guys so much for checking out our video. Please remember to like, share, and subscribe if you haven't already, and we will see you guys in our next video. Bye.